Certification preparation. Back in my day in the 90s, we just would go to a place and we would take a test in a little tiny room on a really old computer, and we would hit the button and then it would tell us what we did, and when we go home with paper. And that was a long time ago, like mid-90s. That's when I first started getting certifications. A lot has changed. We have now things happening where when you take tests, you've got to secure your room, and you're taking it all remote with a remote proctor, and questions are changing every year to keep up with the piracy and sort of the sneakiness of stealing answers. So on the show, I had the team on from KodeKloud. We're going to spell that out right there, KodeKloud. Friends of mine, Mumshad, Vijay, they come on the show. You've probably seen Mumshad's courses. Mumshad Mannambeth has been another person like myself for almost a decade making container courses, Docker, Kubernetes, all the tooling. And now he's running a giant platform of learning, and they're introducing AI into your learning and certification prep courses and skills and labs and stuff. And we go through all of it. We talk about all of the Linux Foundation certifications that they cover. They've launched over 100 courses now on their platform, and they cover a lot, if not all, of the Linux certifications, especially around Kubernetes and the cloud native ecosystem. I'm a huge fan of that. I think this is great stuff for everyone, especially if you're early in your career and you're using certifications as a way to prove your expertise. Or you're like me, you've been around forever and you want to show that you're up to date. We talk about in the show what's changing in the certifications, which ones you should get for certain situations. And they give a lot of advice to everyone in chat, thanks to you all that show up on Thursdays, because that chat was very helpful in understanding what students are needing, what people are trying to learn and figure out with their certification path, and how KodeKloud can help you decide what certification and what prep you need to take next. Then we dive into how can we use AI to help our learning. It looks like a lot of fun. Mumshad, start us off. Who are you and what do you do?
Thank you, Bret. Yeah, first of all, thank you so much for having us on your show. I'm a big fan of your show. I've watched a lot of episodes. You create a lot of value with your content and your conversations. Honored to be here. So I'm Mumshad Mannambeth. I teach Kubernetes and generally DevOps technologies through our learning platform called KodeKloud, where we help our students learn in a kind of an interactive, hands-on approach using our hands-on labs.
And Vijin, what's up?
Hey, Bret. So as Mumshad said, big fan. I met you in KubeCon last time, and I told you that one of the courses, like way back in 2016, 2017, when I was doing Docker, I think even before taking Mumshad's course, that's one of the first ones I did, the Docker Mastery one back in Udemy. So been following for a long time, yes, and in KodeKloud, I've been working for almost as close as Mumshad for 5 years now, and started off as a trainer as well, working across different content-related things, but mainly related to the hands-on lab. So we are very proud of our hands-on labs. We and my team built the backend for providing the interface that probably many folks have used it so far, but giving access to hands-on labs immediately after a video so that they can get their hands dirty and learn the topic. So that's what I do. And very happy to be here.
When I first started, we had built this community in Slack where we had a couple of thousand students, and it was just growing. And I was there every day answering everyone's questions. So I was kind of doing a number of different things. So, create courses, that's one thing, but then build the labs. So the labs was something very initial that I built in a very kind of scrappy way at first. And it was just so overwhelming that I was just not kind of able to do both at the same time. I really needed somebody to own the labs and, work on it. And I tried hiring a lot of people just the traditional way, and it was just none of that really worked out. And so, it just occurred to me one day that I have these thousands of folks in the Slack community that I could just, start looking at. And so, I found a guy who was just, running around helping answering others' questions, and that was Vijin. So I just asked him if he would be interested in kind of helping me with some of the work on the lab. And we just started part-time, worked together for a few months. And then we just decided that we just had to work together full-time, and I reached out. And we've just done that so many more times. I guess maybe we've hired like 20 plus folks just from the community that we have and just through referrals that way.
I remember back then I was actually working for Deloitte here in Canada, and it was just helping people just on the same journey as me. I was trying to get CKA certified then. I had already done your course, the Doctor Mastery one, and I wanted to get CKA certified. It was 2017, 2018-ish. Yeah, at that point, it was just, and that community, I clearly remember even now, it was not just me, a bunch of people were just on the same journey, answering user questions and learning along the way, right? So it was not for, at that point in time, even looking for a next job and things like that. It was just helping the community and just organically went from that to now being the CTO here for me especially, right? But as Mumshad said, we have hired at least 4 people within my engineering team who are from the community, the same Slack group from the olden days. Now we are moved to Discord. And we even have community support and things like that, which are people from the community who are like really eager to help the fellow learners. So very interesting. That was.
Yeah, you never know. Hang out in a training community with the instructor that they provide. You might just end up with a job. It's happened before. I've got teacher assistants for the courses helping out, and I don't have that team like you guys have, but it sounds awesome. Like, it sounds like a great way to find good talent and people that are eager to learn. And that's really one of the themes of this show is going to be about, the thirst for learning should never die. We all get exhausted, and that's totally fine. I have years where I'm like, I'm tired. It's a lot.
Yeah.
But I think one of the core attributes of all the great engineers I've met over my career is just hungry for knowledge. I mean, certifications are a part of it, but they just want to tinker. They want to figure something out. They want to hear about that new tool and make it work. And it's insatiable. Like, it's one of those things where if you can find someone who just can't stop, attach to the hip with that person, because they're going to probably go places, and you want to be around those kind of people. Awesome. Let's talk about certs, because we could make a whole show about certs, but we're going to cram a bunch of other stuff in here too. So what do you see right now? Like, we were just talking about Kubestronaut. Should we talk about Kubestronaut first, just so people know what that is? Give us like an introduction to this program. It's really new.
So actually, Kubestronaut, the idea came from the community, right? Small community of folks who kind of hang out together. I think one of them suggested the idea, and then
Ramesh.
Ramesh, yes, exactly.
Yeah, he helps run Kubernetes at Apple now.
Yeah. So, yes, amazing guy. So yeah, I mean, I think he had the idea, as everything is with the whole cloud native community. All of the ideas come from the community. It's just a big sign of how ideas from the community make it to the top. So the Kubestronaut program is where you become a Kubestronaut. So you get the Kubestronaut badge, you get the Kubestronaut jacket if you complete all the 5 Kubernetes certifications. So that's the CKA, the CKAD, the CKS, and then you have the new certifications, which are the KCNA and the KCSA. So as you all probably already know, the CKA is for the Kubernetes administrator, the CKAD for the application developer, the CKS for the security certs, and then you then have the newer KCNA and KCSA courses, which are not really the typical hands-on courses, but these are more of the multiple choice questions. So one is focused on the administration, the other is security focus. So if you have an active certification on all the 4, then you become a Kubestronaut. So if you go to the Kubernetes, the CNCF Kubestronaut page, you can basically see the program, and you can see a list of all the Kubestronauts listed over there. There's a map.
Yeah, you were pointing out there's like so this came out in Paris, right? Like, they announced this, I think, in Paris.
Yeah.
So technically 7 months ago. And there's 822 now.
Amazing.
I am in just awe. I'm sure that these people had a few of them already. It would be one hell of a program for someone to go through an intensive where they like literally took all 5 tests in 6 months. That's like another achievement in and of itself. But I mean, bravo to these people. This is a lot of work. I did this once I am not one of these, by the way. I did this kind of stuff when I was young. And the quick story was Microsoft had a program like this many years ago. It was MCSE, and I think it was like 7 or 8 tests minimum. And part of that, I was in the military, I was in the US Navy, and I was doing it. My goal was to get out at 24 and have this premier top level cert, but I was stationed in Italy. So I was taking tests on an Italian keyboard, which is slightly different than an American US keyboard. And yeah,
And a couple of keys are at different places, but it's still the same characters, but it's like, there's a couple of things moved around. And so I did it, I feel like a little bit in hard mode, because back then we didn't have the internet. We didn't have cert prep. I think the best we got back then, we had no KodeKloud. So we had to read books. And then I think we had actual questions on a CD that you would load in your computer, and you would load up this program, and it was a horrible program, but you would just have multiple choice questions and you would go through them. And that's all we had. And then you went and took the test, and luckily I passed. So I feel like I'm going to have to do all this stuff again now that I'm old, and it's going to hurt a lot more. I feel like this time it's going to be harder. My brain doesn't work as well. So I'm going to need to take your stuff, because I don't do cert preps yet. I don't have any certification courses. So this is something where I feel I'm like, I got to go to the pros. So you guys, you have a learning path, which I love. I love learning paths. Tell me about it.
So we have multiple learning paths, but this one specifically for the Kubestronaut program is really what you need to go from learning from the very basics of Kubernetes all the way to kind of getting certified. Now, the way that it's organized is kind of in terms of the difficulty level. You basically start if you're really starting from scratch, if you don't know anything really about Kubernetes, so you basically start with the Kubernetes for Beginners course, which is a combination of, which is a shorter course, which will have videos and labs. And then once you gain that basic knowledge, then you start with the KCNA. So I recommend starting with the KCNA, because that's not a hands-on exam. It's a multiple choice exam, something that you can kind of easily target for. So you shouldn't have to spend too much time. And then, of course, the CKA, which is probably the most popular one that's out there. That's going to cover, I guess, 70% of all Kubernetes topics. And then from there on, you have the CK80 and CKSs, which are a lot of them have overlaps with what you learned in the CKA course. So there is a lot of kind of overlap between the certifications. So if you're kind of doing it in one stretch, you don't really have too much of kind of learning to do, really. So if you go from CKA to CK80 is really not that difficult. CKS, there's a lot of security concepts, which is, the CKS is probably the toughest one out of all the five.
That's what I was going to ask. Yeah, I was going to ask, is the CKA the heavy lift? You get the hard thing out of the way early on, and then, yeah.
Yeah, everything else becomes a little bit easier. Yeah, you'll have to do a little bit of work for the CKS though, because that's the security component is the thing is, for most people, security is, you really have to sit and learn security, It's not something that just people want to learn, out of interest, right? Somebody has to force it down your throat to learn security, because it's not the most interesting thing to learn. Yeah. And that's why I think the CKS is a bit tough, because you have to kind of go out of your way to learn a little bit more about, certificates and some tools that are needed to AppArmor and things like that you have to kind of go out of your way to learn.
Yeah, but even then, just mentioning PKI certificates and AppArmor, these aren't actually Kubernetes things. And I leaned in heavy to security early in my career. When I say early, I mean 2000. And I got some security certs from SANS, and I actually got a job. Technically, the job was PKI certification. PKI certificates, we all know them as SL certificates, but they can be used for anything. And I was going to be the enterprise admin for it. And it really ended up just being an email administrator. But at the end of the day, I had to really know PKI. And that knowledge I still use that knowledge 25 years later. It is foundational, TCP IP is to my understanding of how the internet works. And everything on our devices all uses that now. So that, and AppArmor is a little more niche, but it is Linux. It's foundational Linux security knowledge. So I feel like what's really cool about these certs, as opposed to maybe what I would call maybe a more vendored cert, is that there's so much of this, if you go through this, the concepts of RBAC, and just so much of this stuff, distributed computing. These are things that even when Kubernetes isn't in fashion anymore, which will happen, and it may take us a while to get there, but it may be decades, but eventually we will have something new, and you will still have this knowledge. I still lean into my IP and routing and switch and packet size knowledge that I learned in the 90s. Books, people, I learned it from books, not videos. Just a flex, I guess, of mine for the moment. You had to learn it. You had to look at pictures. But I think this is really cool stuff.
I mean, should we talk for a minute about who is this for? I mean, obviously, this is the astronaut program for Kubernetes, right? This is the hardest thing in certification land that the Cloud Native Computing Foundation and the Linux Foundation have made. Like this is the pinnacle. So I wouldn't want to suggest that people have to have this to get a job, because that feels like a very huge lift. But do you see people that are like straight like freshers coming out of university able to get a lot of this knocked out? Are they able to do it with not a lot of practical experience?
Yeah, I think one of the ways that the Kubernetes certifications are different is how they are hands-on, as opposed to maybe some of the AWS or other kind of, vendor certs that you can compare to, right? A lot more like the Red Hat certs that used to be there. They're like, some of them are like really, really hard to break through. So I think the fact that these are hands-on, at least the three out of the Kubernetes certifications are hands-on, really pushes people to spend time on keyboard and get as many hours of hands-on experience as possible before you can actually go out and attempt the exam. And I think because of that, we do see people like freshers who are, I guess, with the options available today in terms of learning, like you can, there are multiple options, including hours where you can learn hands-on, practice your own. There are so many resources today that are enabling everyone, I guess, including freshers, to go out and learn by doing and really attempt the exam. And I think it's a lot more easier for people who have that experience, as you said, about the PKI certs and the way that you configure them. I think those are some of the things that you kind of learn by experience, by having that years of experience in the industry. So I think that way it's a little bit easier for those who are experienced. And we do see a lot of folks like who are very experienced who come in and learn and, refresh, take the courses as a refresher. But yeah, I think we do see, both of this. There are a lot of, especially the CNCF ambassadors that you mentioned, a lot of them are freshers. They're doing an incredible job at, creating content, helping others, and being in the community.
And I think it's also the accessibility, right? It's, as you said, like back in the day, it was not easy, whether it was for Microsoft, and I remember the RHCE ones from back in the day where you had to fix kickstart stuff for Red Hat Linux. That's the stuff that you used to get, and there would be someone watching you while you're trying to fix it and things like that. It was really, really scary. But now it's, as Mumshad said, I think it's a mixed bunch because we do see a lot of freshers or even like junior engineers, system admins who are actually reaching for these because it's that much more accessible from various platforms, like such as ourselves. There's also CNCF provides their own, I think, like a simulator package as well, like along with the bundle. So people can actually go their resources and also try to attempt it. If even though it might not be that easy without additional preparation and stuff like that, but at least they do provide a simulated environment where people can go and see what the actual exam interface is going to look like and things like that. So it's definitely gotten a lot easier over time compared to what it used to be before, especially if you had to read from user manuals and things like that, which they used to give us for RHCE back in 2007 and things like that. It's much more easier right now. And of course you can do it from the comfort of your home. It was not like that before. You had to go to an exam center and in-person proctoring, people breathing down your neck while you're, as I said, trying to fix Kickstart and Pixie Boot and things like that. So
they wouldn't let you go to the bathroom. They lock you in the room. Yeah, Cisco had a cert like that, the CCIE, which I think is still around. It was sort of a legendary thing. Like you had to drive in the States. This is dating myself a little bit, but 20 years ago, I didn't attempt to go for it. I got a couple of those Ciscos, but I didn't go all the way because I found routers and switches very interesting, but not something I wanted to do full time. I did it temporarily when someone was missing out of the networking team, but I was like, this is really fun, but man, I want to do more. Like they put you in a physical lab with a bunch of hardware, and then they break it and they say, okay, go fix it. Like you had to rack and stack and do all that stuff in a lab while someone stands there. And then you had to, log into iOS, which is what their OS was called. And I had a friend that did it, and he had to go to Atlanta. So I'm East Coast. That's like a plane ride or an all-day drive. And he would go there and fail. I think he failed. He's a super smart dude, one of the smartest guys I've ever met. I think it took him 3 tries to get it, and he had to go there each time, get a hotel, spend all day in the lab. And I've never really heard of that ever anywhere else. Like that level of intense, you got all this hardware, you got to fix it. So let's all appreciate, because I hear you people when you're complaining about the proctors. The virtual proctors are a pain. It does suck. You have to lock yourself in a room, and you can't have paper around you, and they have to spin your laptop so that they can see the whole room, so that there's not someone feeding you information. And I get all that. It's a pain, but it's way easier than flying to a hotel. So count your lucky stars that you can actually still do it on a laptop, because most of us back in, you had to go to, they always had a really old computer when you would go to those places to learn. It was always like your mom's old computer that even she couldn't use. And it was like, it would spin up the program and you could just hear the hard drive grinding, and the AC wasn't working. So it was hot. It was always a tiny monitor because it was all cheap stuff. Anyway, those days are gone.
And even talking about CKA, right? I think those have become easier too. Take a look at it, right? Even those things have kind of become a little bit more accessible. I remember it used to be a 3-hour exam with, the Kubernetes, the hardware and things like that, which was also like a key component of it. And when I took it the first time, was it in 2018 or something like that? Felt, I've taken it multiple times, like 4 times or something like that. And just to see how it has evolved over time. And I feel overall, it's a little bit more accessible. You don't have to sweat over one question, which is, I don't remember what the grading was, but like the 16-mark weightage question, which was just fixing a worker node, which is suffering from one of those issues, which is covered in the Kubernetes, the hardware, right? So it has become gradually a little bit more accessible that way as well.
Just to point out, we mentioned this before the show. In order to stay a Kubestronaut, you have to keep your certs current, which is, to me, a whole nother level of commitment. Because, sure, you can achieve this once, get the jacket, and then just let them all expire. That's kind of what I've done over my entire career. I'm very bad at recerting. And, this is like if you think about it, if you took one of these every 6 months, it feels to me like mathematically, you're certifying every 6 months for the rest of your life that you want to keep this thing. This is no small achievement. Am I wrong in that math? Is this something that's like forever commitment? Obviously recerting is going to be easier, but it means you have to stay up on the latest stuff. You can't be on Kubernetes 1.15 and still pass a 130 test, right?
Yeah. So that's the other thing with Kubernetes, right? Like things change so fast, so quickly. Every quarter or every 4 months, there's a new release and things change. And the exams change too. The exam environments change. They try to stay almost as close to whatever the latest stable version of Kubernetes is. So that means we have to keep updating the courses. And that means everyone, whoever is certified needs to keep themselves up to date. I think the current CKA validity is about 2 years. Right. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a decent time, because in 2 years, a lot of things change.
Right.
At least in the past, it has changed in Kubernetes.
Yeah, it's 6 versions. That's, there's a lot.
Yeah.
There's a lot.
If you want to stay in the game, I guess, it's a really good way to keep yourselves up to date, to stay committed. But yeah, of course, it depends on individuals, on what their priorities are.
Yeah. Yeah. I can see different approaches. One person, they got laid off and they're looking to certify up to look good for a new job. So they might get it. And then once you get the job, you get comfortable and then you let it slide. And then the problem is, if you want to get it again for the next job and you didn't stay up with it, now you got a bunch of work. Let's get to some questions. Is CKA no longer a prerequisite for CKS?
So it is. Yes. So to take CKS, you need to be CKA certified. But they did make a change recently. So in the past, you had to have an active CKA certification to attempt the CKS exam. Mm-hmm. Now, they removed that limitation. So you just need to be CKA certified. Don't necessarily need to have an active subscription. So if you took your CKA certification like 3 years ago, it's expired, you can still go ahead and attempt the CKS without having to recertify the CKA. So they removed that limitation. So that's the clarification there.
Does Mumshad know when the new topics will be updated on the KodeKloud courses to reflect these changes in the CKA exam?
Yeah, so that's what I'm going to get to next. So I'm actually currently in the process of just finishing up the KCSA course. So that was the last piece that was missing from our list of courses. So we didn't have the KCSA course until now. And then immediately after that, I'll have to jump on the CKA updates because I know that's getting updated. I just finished the CKS updates. I'll have to dedicate my time entirely on updating, keeping my courses up to date, going forward, and maybe find someone else to run the company. But I guess, these have been keeping me busy, right? So I just finished updating the CKS course, and now the KCSA is out, and then I'm going to get on to the CKA next. So
I don't think I realized that you were the person doing all these. Because I know on KodeKloud itself, there's a lot of courses by the rest of your team and other people, right?
Yeah. So the Kubernetes ones, right? The certs, especially the certs on Kubernetes, because I started those, I just continued to do that myself. Right? It was just easy for me to just continue to do that. But, all of the other courses, so if you go to the other learning paths at the top, so if you just go to the learning paths drop down at the top, you'll see a lot more learning paths, right? So if you go to the AWS, that's where you'll see the likes of Michael Forrester, Sanjeev, and others who will lead those tracks. Yeah, so this is where you'll see those guys leading the AWS certifications. And then we have others who are doing the IAC, the CI/CD, and all of that. So we have different trainers leading some of those.
By the way, total random thing. Did you know about BlueSky? Community, that's what we're talking about. But you should check out BlueSky. It's basically a Twitter clone. It's actually fully open source, but the cloud native community has fully leaned into this. And I now have custom feeds for learning all about KubeCon. I'm sure someone has made a Kubernetes feed that it's like more advanced filters for finding what you want. So it's a pretty exciting place over there, and it's good times for those of us in cloud native and Kubernetes. I'm there every day learning from a lot of the people that came out of KubeCon, all the speakers and the people from GitHub Universe. So let's talk about this new AI thing. I mean, the title of this show was like AI Cert Prep. So we really kind of leaned into, we all need certs, especially early on in our career to prove our expertise. We all are playing with AI and trying to figure out how can that help me in programming? How can that help me in my daily life? The industry hasn't figured it out yet. Like, we don't have all the answers. We've all just got lots of little tools. You guys talked earlier about Cursor. I've tried Cursor. It's a VS Code variant. I use VS Code Copilot every day. I use GitHub Copilot in my Vim. Yes, I still use it in Vim. And so we all have played with these in various forms. I've had Olama on the show for open source LLMs. But how exactly does AI help me with cert prep? I've never done that. So help me out.
Yeah. AI, of course, has a big role in terms of, everything that we're going to do in the future, right? Especially education. I think my first experience was when I used Cursor to build something. So we actually worked on a project internally recently to kind of auto-translate the subtitles and captions of all our courses into multiple different languages, which we tried in the past, but before the whole AI stuff, and we were not happy with the way that it turned out because I couldn't really get all the technical stuff correctly. We did have transcribing, services in the past. So we kind of dropped it. But with AI and with Whisper, we kind of were very interested in exploring how that would work out. So we did a couple of POCs and it really worked out. And I wanted to build a solution to something that could just integrate with Vimeo, which is our kind of video hosting service. Maybe download a video, transcribe it, translate it to different languages, and kind of come up with, a decent amount of accuracy, like 85%, 90%. Because we had people use Chrome extensions to just translate subtitles and watch in different languages, which, they shouldn't have to do.
Right. It's neat that it's possible, but it does feel kind of like a hack, right?
Exactly. It's a hack.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they were kind of happy with the translation that it gives, which is not great, right? So we wanted to do something better. And so I thought I'll give it a shot just by myself, just so I wanted to learn how all of these things work. I thought it would take a week or so to build a basic proof of concept. I started with Cursor AI, and I was just blown away that I was able to kind of put something together in 2 days, right? Mm-hmm. A number of things, like one, I could ask it to just write code for me for something, like a function or something, and it would immediately do that. It would auto-complete things, which is, again, like it can read, it's like it can read your mind, right? So you write one line, you kind of go and try to write the next line, and it's just automatically auto-completes the entire line for you, like variable names and everything, right? Or you just write a comment and you hit tab and it just fills the next few lines of code with the code. And then I could just select a bunch of lines and ask it to tell me if I did it right. And that's when I realized that's the real benefit of AI, using AI and, kind of pair programming, where you could use it to, you could write some code and you could ask it to kind of critique it and tell you if you did it right, if there's a better way to do it. That's amazing.
I love it asking it to make this code shorter or more secure, or give me 5 tips for making this cleaner. Yeah, it's pretty cool, stuff like that.
Yeah. So that's pretty cool. And we all know that it's very easy to get started with it and to build basic applications with it, but it gets really complex as the application gets complex, right? And then, maybe it's not that as efficient, which I guess eventually it'll get there. But at least for someone to go from 0 to 1, it's amazing what it provides, right? Like people can now build basic proof of concepts with it. And even like I've seen people just build basic versions of entire working applications with it end to end. So I think that's where we all kind of realize that there's real scope for using it for educational purposes. It works really, really well. So Vijin and team kind of came up with this concepts of, multiple different ideas, using integrating AI with our lab environments. So we already had lab environments that people are using. So how do we kind of make it easy? So one of the challenges we were facing was when people had issues with labs, sometimes, the answers, the stuff they do does not work. It does not get validated as expected. A lot of times we found people complain that, I did it right, but your lab says I didn't, and we would look into that and we would find that even though the person thought they did it right, there was something that was wrong, maybe the typo or something which failed kind of the validation scripts that we run in the back end. So they would then post it in the community and, it would take someone a little bit of time to get back to them. So there were some of those challenges. And that's where we thought if we could integrate AI into the lab environments, and if the AI knows what the question is, if the AI knows what the user has done, if the AI has access to the backend infrastructure that, the infrastructure that the user is working on, it's something that nobody has done, right? And if it can combine that information to tell the user exactly what they did wrong, that would be amazing. So that's what Vijin and team put together a proof of concept, and we've been working on that. And it's kind of in a very good state right now, where initial stage, of course, where, I think we had more than close to 10,000 sessions already with people really using AI to ask questions within the lab and get answers to that. So I'll let Vijin speak more to it. But that was the whole idea. I think for an educational purpose, it works really well. And I think probably the future of education is really, really personalized assistance within learning, maybe even creating custom learning paths for people, just identifying where your skills are and just helping you just fill those gaps, exactly identifying the gaps and helping you fill those gaps, which I think is going to be very efficient in terms of learning in the future. So that's where kind of we're all trying to move to. And I guess maybe even for certification purposes, maybe the cert game will change in the future, right? It could with the AI revolution. Certifications could now be personalized, right? It can kind of change and tune based on, the work that you do. It can probably, validate your work immediately using agents and things like that. So I think we're kind of trying to build some infrastructure for that from our end early on, early days. But yeah, Vijin, if you want to take it away, share a bit more detail.
Sure, and I'd be happy to show a demo on how it works. But as Mumshad said, right now, our main focus was to put in that assistant, a teaching assistant that can just go live into someone's lab while they are doing it and help out. Because we talked about community earlier on the show, right? Where we have got people supporting students and things like that. But what if they want help immediately and right there and also see what they've been doing wrong? It's often difficult to do that when you're sharing it on Slack or Discord and things like that. So this is something that we tried out initially. We've been working on it for a few months. And as Mumshad said, we have kind of released it for all of our labs right now so that this teaching assistant is built in and it can help you when you need it. So having said that, let me share a quick demo. We've been talking about CKA and Kubernetes and things like that. So I thought a good topic to choose would be one of the labs from our Kubernetes. The first one, the Kubernetes for absolute beginners. And I'll pick a lab, which is just for deploying pods. So traditionally, all of our hands-on labs are self-validating. They give you a task. They ask you to explore the environment. I'll show you that in a minute. So for example, this is a Kubernetes cluster on the right that you got access to. It's an exclusive environment which only the user can have access to. So if there are 100 people using it, they'll get their own exclusive Kubernetes environment. And the first few questions are exploratory in nature. We encourage people to go play around with the Kubernetes, the command line utilities, to find out answers for things. For example, this one is asking the user how many pods are there within this Kubernetes cluster in the default namespace. Now, of course, this follows the actual video where we are talking about how to go and find things. But what if they forgot about it or they just stuck in between, right? So we've got traditional approaches where there's a hint, there's a solution and things like that. And I can go and type the exact command and find the answer. But this is what we have integrated now, the AI Assistant tab here, which is built into all of our labs. So I can ask it, like first, let me just ask it simple greeting. So it'll say, yes, how can I help you with this specific question? So I can ask it, how can I find the answer? And forget the typo, that should be all right. It'll tell me what exactly I'm supposed to do.
It's so great that the robots don't care that we type correctly. It's just, it's fine.
Exactly, helps me all the time. So I'm just going to copy and paste it here. So one of the things that we thought would be really useful is not just a Q&A where it has got, okay, you know that I'm asking about how to find pods, but it can also see what you've done in your terminal. So I'll just say that, hey, I just ran the commands. So now it should actually give me a better answer saying that, hey, okay, I can see that you ran the kubectl, you'll get pods, and it says that no resources are found. This means that there are no pods. So the correct answer is 0. So a little bit more personalized based on what I typed. And I'll just go back and attempt it. So the next one I think is a hands-on task where I'm supposed to go and create a specific pod with the Nginx image. Now, this one is different. It's not multiple choice. So again, I can go and ask, how do I do this? Or I'll show you some of cool little tricks that it can do. But let me just ask it how I can create this specific pod. So I'm just going to say that, yes, I did it, right? I'll just go and give it an answer, ask it to validate it for me, and I just created. So now it should be intelligent enough to go and check whether I've actually done it or not. Yeah, it can check that. Again, it can go and check the terminal. It can check the actual commands that I have typed, and it can also inspect the state of the objects that it's supposed to check. So in this case, I verified the results. It says that it is not completed successfully. Go and run this command, right? It says that I've analyzed your terminal logs and it's not done it. So I can ask it, hey, can you do it yourself? So now it should go ahead and create that pod for me and also validate whether it's running and things like that. And it should come back with an answer saying that, yes, I've successfully created the new pod using the Nginx image. Now, if I go and run this command here, it will show you that there is an Nginx pod which was created 7 seconds ago. Right. So I don't even have to do it, but it's more about, hey, if you're getting stuck somewhere, it can do things for you. But the wider application is to help people who are stuck. Right. And one more thing that we really found a use case for is we actually ran a beta before we released it in production. And there were a bunch of people who were trying it out for, their own local languages like Spanish and Portuguese and things like that. So because of that's another good use case. So I'm on a new question now, so I can ask it in any language that I want. For example, I just copied something in Spanish. I think it's right, but I'll just copy and paste it here. It's supposed to say, how do I do this in Spanish? So it's supposed to answer back in Spanish, right? And the other feature is that you can also talk to it. I'm not going to show that in this case, but you can talk to it so that it's like an organic conversation with a teaching assistant, and it can reply back just as efficiently. So that's something that we have integrated. And over the last few weeks, we've been working really hard on integrating it with all of our labs. So we got around 800 plus labs across Kubernetes, Linux, Terraform, AWS, and things like that. So we have actually added that to, I think, 95%. I think we're almost close to finishing it off, but it should be available in all 4 labs so far. So Yeah, it's actually, we're getting pretty good feedback. It's still early days, and there are things that we're working to improve the speed, the quality of answers and things like that. And we're also trying to train our models that we are using internally to, get better over time based on, as you can see, it is actually running a command directly within the terminal here. So it's supposed to know what it has to run, the exact commands that it has to run and things like that. So we are trying to also learn and improve the models and improve the processes so that we can get better responses over time. But yeah, that's what I wanted to show for this. There's also one more thing that I kind of wanted to demo that's kind of similar but yet different, which is the KodeKloud AI Tutor, which is similar to what Mumshad mentioned. So that's another aspect that we are looking at, which is right now free. So anyone can go and use it. We are giving away free credits and things like that. So people are welcome to use it, even if they're not registered and things like that. It's actually a free course. So if I go to all courses here, there is something called as the AI Tutor. As you can see, it's free. Click on it, and we've got two options here, and we are working on this quite a lot, trying to add more components, making it more accessible and things like that. I'll show a short demo of other implications that we think could be useful for students as well, right? So whether it is certification prep, if there is a concept that you would like to learn within Kubernetes, say network pods, if you're talking about RHCE, you want to learn about LVMs and things like that, which probably you want to get more practice on, which is not covered in one of the labs or within the lectures, and you want to have the custom learning experience for yourself. This is where we think AI Tutor could help. So in this case, it's again similar to the last interface. In this case, I've selected the Linux AI Tutor, which should be loading up CentOS virtual machine, and I can ask it questions to create a custom learning path for me.
I have tons of questions. So these AIs seem to be very, have you fed your lab information and it's got a lot of your custom content in there, right? It's aware of the lab you're in the lab case, so that if I have that conversation that we didn't have time for, it feels like it's going to replace Q&A. Like, first off, I don't know about your courses, but in mine, I think the idea that Udemy and other course hosters have is that there's going to be students helping students, but I don't really find that. I find that really, it's 90% of it is teachers and TAs helping students. And I feel like in a lot of cases, if it has a lot of the context, if it has the video captions and the labbed verbiage and all that, then it can intelligently answer in a very close to instructor voice, so that you can replace all that back and forth. Because I always hate that my students, I only check once a day, and I hate that they have to wait 24 hours, maybe at worst, to get an answer, because they're right in the middle of learning, and then they have to wait on a response, hoping that it'll be not a weekend where I don't check. So do you see this as is it already sort of replacing the Q&A? And I mean, obviously in the future, it feels like it would, but how do you see that today?
Yeah, it's still early days for us. We've not replaced anything so far. For example, our community and things like that. We've got our own Udemy courses where there are people answering, but that's the way we think this is going to be, because what we have to remember is that most of these questions are very repeated, right? So someone would have already asked these exact questions 2 years ago, and someone has given a very nice answer to it, but then they have to go back and find it, or, link that thread to another conversation and things like that. And also it could be very, very custom where, this user is facing this specific issue where, they'll have to get that answer immediately. So I definitely see that this could be something which could, have wider applications for replacing Q&A altogether. And would be great to just do that, because we are feeding him that context, especially for that given hands-on lab. And it's able to see what you're doing wrong and tell you then and there what you're doing wrong or how to improve it and things like that. So by all means, I think that's definitely something that's going to happen.
Yeah. So I'm not sure. I think there's still room for people to interact with each other and, learn from experiences and be part of the community. So that's definitely there. I think in our case, what this is going to help more is to provide very specific feedback on that specific questions and specific questions that people have when it comes to working on lab, which it's going to be very hard to still get from the community. You don't typically share your screen with someone else and have synchronous conversations, right? You're working on a question, you probably have 10 seconds or a minute max to get an answer to that, to solve that and move on, which even through the community, it's an async work, which is going to take a little bit of time. for you to get answers for. So I guess in all those cases, this is going to be very helpful for students in knowing exactly what they did wrong, what went wrong, and getting feedback.
Yeah. Like the instructor and teacher part of me is trying to not have an existential panic about the future of AI learning, and that the reality might be in our lifetime that AI does a lot of the learning, and there's like maybe a proctor that sort of oversees the AIs, but that it's really, I don't know if have you played with the AI. I mean, a lot of my videos now, the AI moves my eyes to track and keep, when I'm reading a script, it keeps it on so it doesn't look like I'm reading a teleprompter. And then our friend James Fearon, recent Kubestronaut and Cloud Native Ambassador and Docker Captain guy, just great overall guy. He is experimenting with translating his videos, and it changes his mouth so it looks like he's speaking French, which is why, I mean, it's his video, it's just moving his mouth a little bit different, which is wild. And I'm just imagining a future where, like, when you select language, you're really getting like the AI Mumshad, that's the only thing different is the mouth is different, and then the translation is an AI voice of you. And what world are we living in when you record in English, but it's available in 190 languages?
Not far away, right?
Yeah.
I think we're already there. We're probably a quarter away, really, in being able to achieve that, right? In fact, that's already one of our projects. And we've been playing around. I think the tools like HeyGen or something. I mean, there are multiple tools.
There's HeyGen, Argyle. There's so many. I've actually tried out. We have tried it out like in bits and pieces. It was not that good a few months ago, but they are also improving at a very steady rate. Scary how good it can get. Wild and scary all at the same time.
I guess it's going to help all of us. I mean, the reach and accessibility, right? I think that's going to probably improve 10x going forward. That's the kind of the positive side that I'd like to see.
Right. And as I mentioned, we're like this stance to learn still and embrace it the right way. And even with these experiences such as tutor and stuff like that, we're just learning along the way and try to see what is the best way to provide a great experience for the user. I still think we are, like, when we talk about AI, there was this big hype train, and understandably so, but it kind of seemed to plateau in the last few months, not knowing, will the models get that much better, or are we that much closer to AGI and things like that? But while we're at it, the best we can do is to see how it can fit in well with our products and, not deviate so much away from our core, because I don't think things like this is going to replace tutors immediately, right? Because there's still so much hope for improvement and it has to learn. I don't think we are there yet, but at the same time, it could be a really good tool to, as I said, provide you customized learning on top of what you already know, like a refresher or something that is not covered in a course, or an additional lab, or getting that, additional tips that traditionally might not have been covered, right? So those are the things that these things can really help with. So with that being said, I can just quickly demo the other part, which is the AI Tutor. I just loaded it up. So this is the Kubernetes one. I just had to really refresh it so that it loads up. So this one is similar in interface, as you can see, to the AI assistant, but there's no task or there's nothing built in. So I can just ask it, hi, and ask it. So it tells me, hey, what can I help you to learn in Kubernetes today? So I can ask it, suggest me some topics about learning, securing pod communication, things like that. I'll keep it really simple. I want to learn about pods and deployments. And it will ask me, yes, that's a good topic. That's something that we've decided. Would you like to put some custom fun themes around it? Football or Arsenal. I'm a big Arsenal fan, so is Murtad. So Arsenal, FC, and EPL, something like that. So again, just something to increase the engagement for the user if it's a topic that you like and whatnot. So so now it will take about 30 to 40 seconds while it's creating that custom learning plan in the backend, and it should be creating a course, a lab, which is dynamic in nature, depending upon what I've asked. So before we saw the pods lab, which had all the questions built in, it has that context because those questions already exist. And it is just helping users answer based on predefined tests and predefined questions that they've already fed into the system. In this case, it's not really there. It is creating it from scratch. And again, it's something similar to what we saw earlier, right? So in this case, again, it started off with a quiz. We tried to keep it similar in experience to what our actual labs are, but it's dynamically created labs. So in this case, there's a bit of an intro welcome to understanding pods and deployments, where we'll manage our digital squad, just like Arsenal FC manages the team. So some theming around it to keep it interesting. And of course, there's like quizzes and tasks, which is what we generally do, which is what most of the exam preps and, that's the traditional way of testing whether someone knows it. But to learn it in a hands-on way, we put it across in a way that you'll have to do things while you're learning it. So in this case, it is asking me to go and find pods in the kube system namespace, which is running. So I'll just copy and paste it here. And as you can see, this is again a brand new cluster which was created 30 minutes ago. So I'm just going to run woodcode-shell. But if I don't know, I can ask it, hey, how can I count the pods or something of that sort. I'm just going to run it here. It says it's 8. So again, the same drill, it's able to see the terminal with the commands that I've typed and things like that. And it's telling me the exact command with the word count here. And I'm just going to say that I ran the command and I see some pods running in the namespace. Yeah, something very generic, but you should be able to understand that, hey, this is good enough. You've actually understood what you're supposed to run, and you actually run the word count as well, and it's actually moved on. So it's like, yeah, you confirm that there are 8 pods running because it can already see my terminal. It knows that I actually counted correctly, or I didn't even have to tell the answer to it. It just knows. It's almost like it's someone beside you looking at your screen and answering based on what it sees.
But what if you make a mistake, like a typo in the command or something?
Yeah, sure. So let me quit. I do that all the time. So it's supposed to figure out what I did wrong and tell me that, yes, you make typos a lot, Vijin. So
this feels like exactly my coding AI experience, where it tells me to do something and then I put it in code and then I get an error and then I give it the error and then it says, okay, try this. And then I say, that didn't work either. Here's the error. And I end up with a 30-minute conversation about the errors it's making me run. But in this case, this is human-generated error.
Yeah. So it was able to figure out, because it can see the terminal, it knew that the command syntax is wrong, and it's telling me what exactly to run.
There's so many different aspects to this as a learner that I didn't really consider before until I was staring at this screen for a minute, where, for example, as an instructor, real talk, right? If you ever had that greedy student where I'll have one student shows up, has great questions, but they're asking enough questions for 100 people. And they just are constantly asking questions. And I'm someone who's like, I would even hesitate to do that because I wouldn't want to take up so much of their time. I'd feel like I was constantly bugging them. But if it's an AI, it doesn't matter. Technically, you're spending more money on the GPUs for a while, but I can just sit there for hours asking questions and diving down into topics, assuming that it doesn't, run out of, if I get too deep and I don't know anymore. But it feels like something where if I want to get nerdy for a minute on something that maybe is even beyond the course topics, but it's maybe adjacent, it feels like it's a way for me to do that without just getting open another tab and then Googling and going down a different rabbit hole. I can just stay in the learning experience and satisfy my curiosity while I'm there in the moment rather than write it as notes later, which my brain doesn't always flow the same way that someone's teaching it to me. So sometimes I want to hop around. Is this any kind of like this where you showed several different AIs, but I often wondered, would it be helpful if I could ask the AI, is there something that I can watch from Mumshad about, service endpoints? I want to customize them. And would it know enough to say, oh yeah, this lecture over here, just click here and you go watch that one now? Like that almost feels like at that point you're now choosing it's like a choose your own adventure book sort of learning methodology. Is that something you've thought about?
Yeah, actually, that's a very interesting point because it's something we discussed a lot internally. I'll let Vijin talk more about like how he's actually built something into this. So the idea about the lecture, I think that's great. That's not something, I don't think we have there currently, but this AI right now is kind of very limited to within the labs and doesn't really go outside the labs. We're applying something on the kind of our learning, the LMS itself that would kind of pick videos and courses from different courses, put together like a custom learning path for students, which is a kind of a separate project. But just within this context, there is something that's there that you've just talked about, which is really kind of a tree of your thought that just where the learning adapts to kind of that learning tree that you have in mind. For example, you start with this, start about networking, you start learning about networking in Kubernetes. And it just gives you these questions, and suddenly you're like, hey, wait, I don't know the specific topic that you're talking about, like subnets or, in networking. Can you just help me kind of refresh my memory on that? So now it can create a new subtree of training that can then customize this to learn about that. And then while you're learning that, you're like, hey, wait, I just realized I need a refresher on some of the basic Linux commands, or basically networking in Linux first before I learn about networking in Kubernetes. So then it can then kind of further go inside and go there, and then kind of come back in the tree. So Vijin, I know you guys have been working on that, something about that. Maybe you can share a little bit more about how you've come up with that.
Yeah, exactly. So this is, again, we are working on phases and understanding, how it is working right now. Is it stable? Is it giving good answers? That's first and foremost the most important thing.
That's clearly the most important part, is if the answers are correct.
Yeah, but for example, if you, as Mumshad said, while you're learning, inside your learning plan, you asked about LVMs and things like that, but suddenly you had more questions about partitions and stuff like that. Rather than keeping it fixed and rigid in terms of, hey, this is the learning plan I created for you, go do it, which is similar to our traditional approach. What we were working upon, we are working on it right now, is to, again, branch out to something else that you might think is relevant, as long as the AI also thinks that fits in well within the learning plan. For example, it's like a relevant command or something that could also be used. Like, for example, I'm learning about the NS lookup command. Now I have a question about what other things can I do to resolve. Let me learn about dig or something else, right? So it can branch out and say that, okay, you want to learn about dig, go to a parallel
that's awesome.
Experience. And then, of course, once you're done, it's all about experience, then come back to the original learning plan so that you stick to what you had in mind earlier, right? And give a good experience at the same time. So
that's incredible.
So it's going to evolve over time, and we are learning a lot as we are building it. But again, the first few, 100 feedbacks that we've gotten is that it is useful. I've actually seen people say that, yes, they are able to learn some specific stuff, like custom stuff that's not covered in some of our courses and whatnot. And that's something that is actually really encouraging for us to keep going and make it even better.
Yeah, like we can deep dive into tech all day and say that this course or that course has the most knowledge or the most whatever. But I think the thing that's more interesting to me than courses that go deeper is courses that the idea that AI could help that steep learning curve at the beginning, because I get a lot, and I know that you probably struggle with this too, is we can't teach everything in a course. Like there's always requirements for a course starting. And even on your page, you have a toggle for do I know container basics or not, because that'll help me skip some steps. But when I'm making a Docker course, I'm not going to teach you NS lookup. I'm not going to teach you dig or how DNS works. And so I can't list every possible assumption of you understand distributed computing, that you understand how virtual Ethernet interfaces work, that you understand. There's just a crazy amount of knowledge that we all kind of have to know that's one of the biggest problems I think with DevOps in general, which is why, you probably answer the question all the time, can a fresher learn DevOps without experience? It's a very hard question to answer, because this whole ecosystem came out of learning what sucked before. And if you don't know what sucked before because you have no experience, it's harder to get started, I think, sometimes, because we don't frame it that way. DevOps solved a hard problem, but if you don't know that problem, you don't know that DevOps exists, and it's a little bit of a pain to do. You have to do things extra with DevOps, codify things in infrastructure as code. Well, we have to do all that stuff because the other thing sucked. Anyway, it's a weird problem of a catch-22, and I feel like if there's anything that comes out of this that besides just me riffing with an AI proctor that can answer all my questions, is that people that get stuck in my courses because I type a command, they're like, what the heck is that Linux command? I don't know what that is. They have to go to Google and they're now lost for an hour, and instead they can just stay here and they can use Mumshad's brain in virtual. All right, this has been crazy. We could do this for 3 hours. This is no joke. This stuff is awesome. This is real stuff that people deal with every day. Can I give you some rapid fire questions real quick as a quick Q&A wrap up? We've had a bunch of them, and I've saved them all. I think Mumshad's answered a lot of them. Okay, I already have a KodeKloud Pro subscription. Do I need to upgrade that to a new AI subscription?
Yeah, so for those who are already Pro subscribers, you can actually upgrade for free. So we're giving away free upgrades to those who are already existing subscribers. So yeah, just go ahead to the platform and upgrade for free.
Nice. All right. Hey guys, been DevOps for past 8 years and never got the chance to work and learn K8s. Any advice where to start? Should I just prepare with tutorials and then go for CCA?
CKA maybe. Okay.
CKA, I think is what he means. Yeah, they mean.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, I think 8 years, I think that's a lot of experience.
8 years DevOps, never got the chance to learn Kubernetes. So KodeKloud?
A lot of people just start from the Kubernetes documentation. I think that's a good place to start learning. There are, the one-on-one tutorials. A lot of us started with the Kubernetes documentation pages. So that's a really good place to start. Very easy for you to set up, your own cluster on your laptop, start learning. There's a lot of one-on-one tutorials on the Kubernetes documentation pages that tells you, how to deploy what containers, and how to create pods, deployments, etc. And of course, if you're aiming for structured learning experiences, if you're aiming for CKA, I think that the CKA is definitely a must that we recommend everyone, because it kind of gives you this whole structure, a set of objectives. To me, the certifications are really a goal, a target to aim for. Personally, I feel like that's a target that I can aim for, and then I kind of really enjoy that whole learning experience. It kind of gives me a goal, and then I am like really working on that every day until I get certified. I think that's the real value of certification, where you have a goal, as opposed to if you're just learning, you kind of can learn for a few hours and then decide for yourself that, okay, I've learned enough and I'm going to stop, right? But if it's a certification, it has a structured curriculum. There are a lot of things that needs to be learned. So that's what I feel is a real value of certification, even more than the kind of the certificate itself or the piece of paper you get, badge you get. I think the real value is that the structured approach that it takes you through, the kind of practices that you have to go through. CKA is very much recommended. I guess that probably should be the first to aim for.
Yeah, I think in general on the show when we have the Q&As, we generally like if you're new to DevOps, the first was probably Linux and IP, like TCP IP and Linux, like just networking, the basics of the operating system that everyone's using. Then like maybe pick your cloud. If you're in a job, right? If you pick your cloud that your company would help you get a cert in, and then maybe go for Kubernetes. Because if you don't have any of that underlying levels, that's where people in my courses get stuck, because they're like, I don't even know what system D is. I don't know what a shell is. I don't know how to run bash scripts. They just need that really base level stuff. If you've been doing DevOps for 8 years, you don't need all that. You've done all that. So you could probably jump right in with Kubernetes, assuming that you've done some Docker, like maybe, and so you understand some of the basics of containers, because you do need that for Kubernetes.
Yeah.
Great question. We get all sorts of learning questions around here, and I'm sure you all do too. The question: I'm a software engineer who does some DevOps related work. Would it make sense for me to take any of these certifications? So like your DevOps sounds like it's one of your roles, but your main job is DevOps is actually writing the app, not I'm guessing you're like what those solo DevOps, I call them, like you're just, you have to take your app and get it onto the servers. So now you got to know all the things to get it on the servers. What do you think?
Yeah. So that's why you have the CKAD, right? The CKAD certification, the Kubernetes for application developers, is really for developers who are building applications, which eventually gets deployed on Kubernetes clusters. As you know, like a lot of kind of DevOps related work are now shifting to developers, which I'm not sure if developers really like
the shift left,
right? So you now need to learn like how to write Docker files for your applications. You need to learn, of course, the 12-factor app methodology, understanding like how the system needs to be designed to kind of make it cloud native. What are the things that you should keep in mind while kind of writing code for your application that eventually needs to go on a container or Kubernetes cluster. And there are things that you need to know on how to even troubleshoot an application which is deployed on a Kubernetes cluster. Like, for example, tools like telepresence, where you can have your development environment itself hosted. A version of the app is running on a Kubernetes cluster somewhere, and you're using tools like telepresence to like remotely connect to that and debug your applications. How do you debug applications that are going to be deployed on Kubernetes cluster? So I think going forward, the developers need to be equipped with some of this knowledge. And so it's good to have, I guess, just really knowing ultimately where your application is going to be hosted on, and just making sure you take those into consideration while building the application. So I think it's definitely, maybe the CKAD is the one that I would recommend. It doesn't ask you to build clusters from scratch or, set up networking or, all of that. But like stuff like network policies and things like that, those are things that you should know. Like how do you package your application for Kubernetes using Helm charts? That is something you should know. So those are some of the things that you would learn, which I think is very, very relevant for developers.
Yeah, the one thing to add on your idea earlier about certifications, the one thing that really I appreciate it is that it helps me be more well-rounded with the tool. I always end up in this weird time where I'm learning for the test, and I'm like, gosh, do I have to learn this? I'm never going to use that part, right? But it's technically a part of the tool. And I do find that, maybe you're in a small shop and you never need to use, daemon sets or something. And so you never just learned that. You never tried it. And then, but your job's change and then your career changes. And a lot of times, if you don't know these things exist or how they work, you don't instinctively use them. So then it might make you a more limited operator of infrastructure because you don't even realize, if we didn't know Terraform existed, we wouldn't even know that it would, how it works. We wouldn't know how to use it. So I think the certs really help ground someone who's especially younger, even if they have some experience, all the things they may need to do later that they didn't even know existed. So I think it's awesome for all that. But by the way, there's a bunch of questions about updates to courses. I think you answered that in chat, but for the audio version, it sounds like several of the certifications are going to change here at the end of 2024 and that you all are working to update them. Do you want to rattle off what's changing with certs or like which certs are changing real quick?
Yeah, absolutely. So the CKS was recently changed, I guess, a few weeks ago. So we are in the process of updating the CKS course. The latest updated version should be out next week. This KCSA course, it was one that we didn't have up until now. It's going to be released tomorrow or day after in the next couple of days. And then we have the CKA course. The exam is getting updated on January 15th. So that's close to 2 months from now. So hopefully by December end, we're aiming to have the CKA course updated to match the curriculum of the new updates. So for now, I think those are the changes that we can see. I don't see anything announced yet for any updates on any of the other courses, the CKAD or the CKA, the KCNA or anything yet. But yeah, usually we try to update our courses by the time the exams are updated. And I guess there's a lot more that's going to come in the AI plan going forward. One of the things we're working on is what we call as an AI key space, which is basically, we're going to release a lot of AI courses. And in these AI courses, we're going to have hands-on labs where you kind of work with OpenAI, Claude, and some of the other AI providers. So now you don't have to go and create your own keys or accounts on these platforms. So we basically kind of give you the temporary keys as part of our labs. So you're going to use that to work with the labs. So all of those are kind of going into our new plan, the AI, what we call as the AI plan.
Will the current CKA course be sufficient for taking the exam in December before the update of the course?
Yeah. So the current one should be good until the exam gets updated on January 15th. So up until that point, the course should be good. But by that time, we would have updated our course. So, if you're taking the exam after January 15th, then you should wait till our course gets updated. And you should wait till you kind of go through the updated material in our course.
All right. Any plans for developer courses, JavaScript and Node.js courses?
Yeah. So that's always been an interesting conversation. We've had some programming or coding courses, which kind of eventually would help you move into kind of our core area that we focus on, which is infrastructure as code, DevOps, cloud native, right? So like Python is something that we have. We have a basic Python course, an advanced Python course. We have Go, a basic Go course, an advanced Golang course. We have shell scripts and everything. We're not sure about other programming languages yet because I think there are so many other platforms that does that really well, right? So I'm not sure if we want to do that yet. I think we're going to really focus on the DevOps, the cloud native related programming languages. I think we're doing one on Rust. Right. So yeah, anything I guess that are kind of related to our domain, I guess that's what we would focus on.
Yeah, like SRE and ops languages. Yeah, I like it. I mean, you got to limit it at some point. Otherwise, you're just you're fighting every other course juggernaut out there at some point. So some people keep asking about a mobile app. They really want a KodeKloud mobile app that allows offline videos.
I think, yeah, that's something I've kind of pushed away a little bit because I was never sure when we should be doing that. But we do keep getting a lot of requests, so I think we should start taking that very seriously. My wife keeps telling me about that too. So she likes to learn on the couch. And, she's like, you don't have a mobile app. So, I want to learn DevOps. I want to learn Kubernetes, but I can't learn it from my couch, I'm like, our web app, like mobile friendly, but it's like, no, it doesn't feel like a mobile app.
It doesn't feel
I need
native.
a mobile app.
I do get questions a lot for my courses about downloading for offline use during commutes and stuff like that, where they have intermittent signals. And it's hard. I mean, to be honest, that stuff is hard. Good luck to you, sir. Yeah. That is hard. Yeah, Getting a mobile app that gives you a better experience than web mobile. That's not just a Chrome around a web app, because now you've got to talk about DRM on the device, downloading. What happens when I replace the video? Does it expire the cache and redownload? I mean, there's a lot. Like Netflix doesn't change their videos when you download them. Like they don't revise every year the episodes of a show. But that's what this is. This is harder. This is actually harder than that. So
also the labs, right? You have to think about how we did integrate the labs. Because traditionally,
the labs would going to be out of question, I think, right? Like
you just and AI would be off. Like you wouldn't have AI. Yeah.
So it's a tough.
All right, a couple of quick ones here. Why no labs in Azure DevOps course?
One of the ways that we pick labs is if it's a certification course, and if it's a hands-on certification, then we definitely have labs for it. If it's not a hands-on cert course, then we kind of add labs on a kind of a need basis, right? If the focus is really helping students, crack the multiple choice questions, like I think in this case, the Azure courses are on our multiple choice, then I think the focus there is more quizzes and multiple choice questions than labs. But we eventually want to get to a stage where we have more labs in all of the courses, right?
I can also answer that, Mumshad. So we are actually working on more and more Azure services, also GCP coming soon as well. So that's part. So some of the things for Azure specifically, as compared to AWS, we are trying to catch up with respect to the number of labs we have for Azure. So that's going to come soon. We already have labs for the ASD 104, 204, and the AI 900 is something that we are also looking at, which is just released. So that should also have labs in the immediate future, but we are working internally within the engineering team to enable those specific services. So that should also come soon.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. I'm having like instructor anxiety right now, just listening to y'all talk about all these things you're going to do. Like, it's coming soon. And I'm like, and I have the same feelings in my own courses. I'm like, it never ends. All right, never ends. And so I'm going to leave it with one last question. Any courses related to MLOps currently are in the works?
So our plan for 2025, like we're planning like 50 plus courses. So we're going to have a lot of them, which are really focusing on our core. So I guess like 50% of that is going to be continuing to be DevOps, cloud native, cloud. But a portion of that is going to be on the new stuff that we're expanding to. So the plan for next year is to expand to the whole AI Ops, MLOps side of things. So there are a couple of learning paths that we're planning on the AI Ops and MLOps part. It's something that we have to figure out by the end of the year and start working on in 2025. So yeah, definitely in the works. There's going to be at least like 15 to 20 courses in that area that we'll have next year. We're just trying to gain a lot more clarity from our end on what it should be. So a request, if I could, if you go to request.kodekloud.com, you're able to create a new request for courses and upvote requests, right? So there's a kind of a voting board there. You can see what courses we're working on right now. You can see the live courses. Okay. And you can see like the courses that are queued, that are waiting for votes. So if you could go there and upvote or add new requests there, that'll really help us pick the courses for next year.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah. That's a nice way to do it. All right. So you heard it first. Everybody go upvote the Node.js course. Troll the course stuff. Yeah. Come on now. They're working hard. I am so appreciative of both of you being here. This has been awesome. I mean, and honestly, we should do this again. This is great. There is so much to talk about when it comes to the intersection of AI and learning. I knew this would be a great show. So thank you for what you do. It's never ending. So you're never going to retire. We can't clone you. So until the AI robots take over, you just have this for now, forever. For those of you, go sign up at KodeKloud, and AI learning is coming, and it's already here. In fact, if you're on KodeKloud, so I'm I'm excited. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.